What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Unapologetically Black Male, where we talk about surviving the stigmas, standards, and systems. Once again, my name is Dwayne Pate. Shout out to my co-host, Brother EJ Stewart. Shout out to our sponsor, J Pope and Associates, who gave us the idea to continue to push this narrative of African American men and just our view of success and just the positivity that we need to hear on a regular basis, because as we know, society doesn't always, promote the positive aspects of our lives. So I want to take this time and turn it over to Reverend Russell St Bearnard, and so he can give us a little bit of background about himself, and we can kind of dive into the questions that we have for tonight.
Thanks for having me, fellas. Super excited to be with you all. And you got me on as Reverend Russ, and y'all just got your regular names on there. My mama called me Russell, and so, but super excited about what you all are doing. I think it's dope. I am. Let's do Cliff Notes. I am born to a single mom in Brooklyn. 14, didn't know my dad, met my dad twice, grew up in the projects on food stamps, but moved forward, went to Morgan. Morgan was a changing factor through parties for a good part of Morgan, but then got saved toward the end of it. And when I say through parties, like I threw parties, like I had a weekly party, I had artists I managed. That was a thing. I thought I was going to be Diddy, and the Lord had something else for me. And so that was cool. Went to divinity school, met my wife, and kind of move where I am now. But I appreciate the platform that you all are creating and the platform that you all are making for brothers to hear stories that we don't always hear, that you don't always have to look at or look like what the music video or what. It was Biggie, right? Either slinging crack rock or you got a wicked jump shot. There are other ways,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we're evidence of other ways. And so I think that's cool. But yeah, from Brooklyn here, now here meaning the DMV, but God has been kind throughout my career to write books, to coach, to lead, currently serve at Kingdom Fellowship AME Church, run a podcast called Ministry Pivot, and a couple other things in the fire. But excited. My wife and I celebrate 17 years of marriage. My daughter is 7. She turns 8 this year, which is ridiculous. And God has just been kind, man. So I don't know. I think I kind of ran around it,
No,
but
you good, you good. Let's go back to Brooklyn. Let's
yeah,
let let's talk about that. Let's talk about growing up in Brooklyn, and what was that experience like, especially being a part as a you said you were raised by your mom, only met your dad twice. So tell us
yeah.
about that experience and some of the things that you had to deal with.
So the wild thing is, right? Like that was like in hindsight, like as I say it, it's still normal, right? Like
Mm,
it's still normal to like I don't know. I think it was more rare to have a friend who was a guy who had his father in his life than it
mm,
was for us, right? So it was like, hey, that wasn't a thing. Like Father's Day went around and that wasn't a thing in the hood. It was like, nah, that's cool. It's your mom. Like it's my mom. It's my
right.
grandfather. Like that was the thing. But there were lessons throughout. You know what I mean? And I think God consistently put lessons throughout. But it was different. I mean, I grew up in Brooklyn. I grew up in Bed-Stuy. Went to school at Boys and Girls High School. So I went to school. This is way back when gangs are still a thing now. We praying for the brothers who are still in that stuff. But I went to school with Bloods. I lived with Crips. Like it was that. But I played ball, so I was in the middle.
Mm,
You know what I mean? So that was the thing. But I was always Russ. Like I was never the guy. Like nobody really wanted me to be involved in the stuff, and neither did I. You know what I mean? I
mm,
always found a way to navigate through it, and I know it was God that finally navigated. But Brooklyn was different. But it taught me a lot of grit. It taught me a lot of push, which helped when it was time on my ministry side, right, to be able to relate to dudes in a different way. You know what I mean? So I think everybody has a different kind of role and a different kind of space.
mm,
But even for me now, I find home hollering at young dudes who, feel like people don't get them. And it's super hard. And I
mm,
get it. It is super hard. But some people do get you. And God has allowed for some people to be put in spaces to be able to show you that there's another way, right? That having the latest Jordan kick is not the only thing, but you should have some stock. You know what I mean? And you can
mm,
do it because if you buy the kicks, you can get some stock. So it's those
right.
type of things that I learned back then that kind of helped me as I went forward. But I had fun in Brooklyn, man. Brooklyn was dope. Honestly, if my wife is with it and the Lord changed it in a way, I wouldn't mind going back to do ministry. Now you got to live in a whole different way to live in New York because it's expensive. DC is
Mm-hmm.
expensive, but New York don't make no sense at all.
Got you, got you.
Absolutely. What being from Brooklyn and specifically Bed-Stuy, what how did you get to Morgan and what was that like that experience, that transition?
So I literally I was a C student at best, brother EJ. I literally was a C student at best. Uh I got out. I went to Boys and Girls High, which if anybody is old enough watching remembers the movie Lean on Me, it was like that. I got metal detected in, and there was only two doors to get out of the building because he chained the rest of the doors. Because like I told you, I went to school with Bloods, I lived with Crips. Like that was the kind of environment. So I made it out because to this day, my godmother, Diane Mosley, shout out Aunt Diane, she helped me get into Morgan's prep program because again, I was a C student. So like Morgan accepted me, but I had to come to I had to come to summer school to get in. And so I came to summer school, got in, and then I thought I was gonna get a scholarship. Then I realized you had to do a full semester of 3.5 work. So I did a spring and a fall, and they were like, "No, you got to do a fall and a spring consecutively." So I gave up and threw parties. The whole nother story. But it was different because when I was saying I was going to school, a lot of my brothers, a lot of my friends were like, "Yo, why are you doing that? We're gonna get a government job." And to this day, and they're good people. I mean, I still know them to an extent. You know what I mean? We're not like buddies, but I know them to an extent. And the majority of them, if they're not locked up or unfortunately not here, they work for the state of New York. Like that's just because that was the thought of success, right? Like I go work for the transit union, I go work, downtown somewhere, I get a pension. And I stay in this apartment that I'm paying rent for, and but that's it. And I came out here that one time, man, and I saw how much stuff was. And I was like, "Are you serious? Like this is what y'all doing? Like this is it?" I was like, "This is all you gotta do?" I was like, "Okay, cool. I'm gonna stay."
Yes, yeah, indeed, it's definitely a different vibe. Growing up in New York at that time, I know that the time you speak of, the blood and crip thing was pretty new, especially for natives. How did you avoid getting trapped in the middle of that? And what was that like? Watching it all around you,
Yeah.
but staying out of the way.
I mean, honestly, man, and I know it's a whole lot. I guess that's why my title is going to stay Rev. It's a whole lot of God talk, man. But honestly, man, looking back on it now, I thought I was smart, right? But I literally see there was spaces that God navigated. One small instance, right? Not around the gang piece, but I play ball like everybody else does. So during the summer, you got a bunch of tournaments. You got a backpack full of jerseys because you're playing 3 or 4 games. Everybody got different jersey. This one day though, we didn't have a game. We meaning like my guys, everybody that's kind of together. We didn't have a game, but my mom got into a car accident, pretty severe car accident. The seatbelt cut her liver, and so I had gotten word the day before about it. So I went to see my mom. So I wasn't with my guys. The reason why that's important is because the next day we knew we didn't have a game. We was gonna chill together on the block. We don't do nothing, chill around the corner store. One of my guys I doubt he's gonna see this, but remains nameless. He was the top student. Like he was the one that everybody. He was one of the ones that had the mother and the father in the household. Fathers would actually mother and father actually were law enforcement, and they all of them went to the corner store, and one of them had the bright idea to try to stick the corner store up with a BB gun. It's not a real gun, but try to stick the corner store with a BB gun. So long story short, I find out after I'm coming home from seeing my mom, knowing she's cool, that everybody got locked up. I'm like, what do you mean they got like that's not what we do. We play basketball. Like we don't do this. But it was that one instance that shifted, and him in particular, this young man that I'm talking about, he was the A student. He was the basketball, football player, baseball player, Fast forward like 4 or 5 years, I'm coming home from college, and he's trying to sell me earring backs, which makes no sense. But he had lost it when he went in, and it was just and the reason I so you asked the question, I really think there were God moments because had my mom not did that car accident, obviously my mom is great now, which is dope. But had she not been in that, I would have been there with them. Now I probably wouldn't have done anything, but you know how it is, and you know how it is in any urban environment, but specifically in Brooklyn around that time, you could be with anybody and they do anything. It's just y'all did it. So it was, and I can count several moments like that in my life where cops had guns to our heads, and it was just a moment that if I had been in the wrong place at the wrong time, it would have went a different way. And so I just think those moments are the things that I'm thankful for, and those moments are the things that I was able to navigate through. On top of me consistently wanting something different, because I knew that that drug stuff, that gang stuff, it wasn't fun because you always got to watch your back. You know what I mean? And you watch your back in a place where you pay rent, where you don't pay rent, your parents pay rent. So that wasn't a rat race and a thing that I wanted to be in. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So you speak about your mom and your I think you said your godmother or your aunt that got you into the.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. She paid. She had the money. So you know how it is. Unfortunately, she had. That's exactly what it was. Aunt Diane, shout out. She literally, and it wasn't like it was crazy. I think about it now, right? I think everybody's numbers are different. It was a couple
Mhm.
$1,000s, but you needed this money to go to Morgan. Like you needed to be able to, and we didn't have it, but she did. And she was like, "Yo, if he's really gonna do this, I'd love to see him go ahead and apply himself. I will give you the money to do it." And
Wow.
that got me into the summer, and then I worked, and then I was going to school full time at night, working full time during the day, and throwing
Mm.
parties at midnight. You know what I mean? Like that's just how the process went. But she was able to help me kind of move forward. And of course, I got student loans, and still paying student loans. Well, I got an MDiv now, so I'm paying on them joints. But
Mm.
at the same time, like that was what did it. It was it wasn't. But I think the biggest thing when it was like I saw not how it's not easy anywhere,
Mhm.
but I saw how different it was to make a life out here. And I
Mm.
saw the contrast between out here and back home. And I was like, yeah, nah, I'm going to come visit, but I'm about to do something different.
Gotcha. Now, were there besides those individuals, were there any like men that kind of played an important role, like as you for you growing up, like while you were before you
Yeah.
transitioned to Morgan?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So my unfortunately recently my grandfather, who I called dad, was the guy. Like my whole story is different, and different in context. But like my mom again had me when she was super young, so she technically didn't even have the right of say on me, right? And I learned
Mm.
more of this. So like, abortion was an option, adoption was an option, but my grandfather, my dad, like I got the video of him saying to my mom. My mom did some video stuff early on, and I got some videos that I look at now. But he was supposed to sign the paperwork to sign me over to be adopted.
Mm.
And he looked down and was like, "No, this dude's gonna be a Saint Bernard. Like, we're gonna figure it out." Now, mind you, my grandfather, Emmanuel St Bernard, who passed away, he passed at 90, passed recently. I had to do his funeral. It was my hardest thing I've ever done in my life. But now, mind you, my grandfather, he actually met my grandmother, who I never met. She passed from cancer. He met her, and they had she had two kids. Then they together had three kids. So they
Mm.
blended five. She passed away when my mom was 8. So
Mm.
now you have this guy who has the youngest of the kids having a kid, looking down on this new kid, saying, I no, we gonna keep him."
Mm.
So my grandfather was my dad all the way through, and then my uncles was super dope all the way through. All my coaches were super dope, and then I did a form of martial arts called jujitsu when I was early on, and so those guys, my senseis there, was super dope. So I had guys who I could look up to, and I had guys who I could trust in and who can kind of push me in the right way. But that, like any environment, right? Like you got those guys in segments outside of my grandfather and my uncles, but then
Mm-hmm.
you got the guys that you run with on the street who are showing you other stuff. And so you had to make a distinction. But I think for me, I was always super driven to know that this really wasn't a life. You know what I mean? Like I
Mm-hmm.
used to remember seeing the dudes who were the guys on the block, and I'm like, yeah, but you live like right upstairs, like with your
Mm-hmm.
brother. Like that's not a thing. Like I knew that early on. Like I understood that you had the car and you had the clothes and you got, but like you right upstairs, like that wasn't a thing. So God, I think specifically put these dudes in my presence to allow me to see the difference. And then again, like I said, there's moment after moment where I just happened not to be around when the foolishness happened that derailed people. And I'm, super thankful for that.
What how did it make you feel, not having your father around growing up, and how did that influence who you are as a father today?
Yeah, man. So the wild thing about that, EJ, is I don't think I ever really came to an understanding of him not being around until I was like in college. Like again, it was like it wasn't a thing. Like you didn't like I don't remember Father's Days like that. You know what I mean? Like it's wild. It wasn't until I was in college I realized, you know what, like there's a whole day like every year for people who got a father. Like that wasn't and it didn't matter because none of the guys that I remember Mother's Day, but I didn't remember the Father's Day thing. So I think that was one point to kind of think about for me. And then I also knew that my dad was young, right? He had me young. My mom was young, so he was young. And so as I started to understand what it means to be a dude and understand what it means now to be a father, I started to give him more grace because I thought that he just made a quick decision and he didn't know what to do. And that kind of is that. So I think that part was there. There were a couple Father's Days when I kind of came to realization that there were holes in me, right? There was like, yo, I should have a dad. Like I do have one. He should be around. Him not being around sucks. Like that's just stupid. But I think what it does now in me is it reinforces, like even today, right? Like Mondays for me, and unfortunately, not most churches take off Mondays. Our church, it's like a zoo Mondays. Like I got meetings all the way through. You're the last thing on my calendar. But every day I stop at 3 to go get my daughter. After we got her, bring back, we get some dinner. My wife's here. My wife's a marriage and family therapist, so she has clients upstairs. And while my wife was finishing up, I go take my daughter out for a walk. Like I intentionally am diving in time because I want to make sure that my time and the quality of my time is very different than I had with my dad. So I do think that's always in the back of my mind that I want her to understand that I'm here, I'm gonna be here, and I want to be the best that I can be for her. And I do think I do attribute that to the fact that I didn't have, so I know what not to do really well. I'm working on making sure I do what's right.
Awesome, awesome. Definitely appreciate that, and how it correlates to how you are a father now. But let's go back to the Morgan days.
I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. I knew it.
Absolutely. We got my co-host is he went to Dell State. I won't fault him for that.
One of
So
the top 10 HBCUs in the country. You know what I mean? It's a little something. You know what I mean?
so yeah, so let's talk about the party promoting and how you got into that and like what ultimately kind of shifted you
The
from
Diddy of
that.
Morgan.
Yeah, man. Again, man, Morgan wasn't my first choice.
Mm,
I wanted to go to Morehouse. They said
mm,
no. I wanted to go. There was another school I wanted to go to, and they said no. And then Morgan said yes, and I was like, "Well, this is where we going." And then I realized again, like it clicked, like, "Oh, this is like school. Like I just got to go to school." And my
mm,
mom had all full intentions for me to go to school full time, and that was it. But then tuition stuff started to hit. She's still trying to figure stuff out. So I needed to do a work study. And then I started seeing the people who are on, I'm from New York, and unfortunately, one of the things that we are really known for is the level of confidence that could be misplaced sometimes for cockiness. And so I saw these dudes throwing parties, and I was like, really? This is the thing? And then I met some other dudes from New York, and we started going to a couple of them, and it started being more of like we are the life of the party thing. And I'm like, well, we at their party, I just paid to get in. Like they should be, we should be doing it ourselves. And that's literally where it was. And because none of the three of us pledged anything, any frat, so we kind of were able to skate in the middle, and then we all played different sports, so we were able to get the sports people in there, and it just worked out. It worked out to where it was going to work out. Let me say it that way, because I don't miss anything. The funny thing is, like, people who I were part of it now, they actually like are like, if I name their names, DJs that you all know. One is a record exec for RCA, killing it. Actually, Sam, she's on my podcast before. She's like killing it. So it's wild how God like still pushed people through, but he was like, yeah, no, I need you not to go. Because I truthfully believe that if he let me go to be the router Diddy, like, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It'd be a whole nother thing. But he needed me on this side of the field, because it would have been. But I enjoyed Morgan. I enjoyed being on a black campus. I enjoyed having black professors. I enjoyed learning black history. I enjoyed seeing a lot of us trying to figure it out on a campus on our own. And I honestly enjoyed the excitement of kind of building a business on campus as I was going to school. Like, I thought that was super dope. You know what I mean? Contracts with building people, contracts with I did all the business stuff for the most part. Contracts with the buses, the cheese buses that would come up and pick all the kids up. Like, liquor license stuff. Like, I'm 21. Like, I shouldn't even be fooling with liquor licenses, but it was what it was. Like, that's just how that kind of works. So it was a growing season that I think was cool, but it was definitely different. And Morgan was definitely dope. And then I ended up going to get my master's of divinity from Howard. And so that was a whole nother thing. And honestly, I chose Howard because I wanted to be. I didn't want to go to I didn't want to go to like Wesley or the St. Mary's. They like monasteries. Like, I don't want to be. I want to go. I want to be like in the mix of campus and like be the Christian guy, and then the divinity school at Howard is literally like away from the campus. So I didn't know that till I started the first day. I was super upset. I was like, yo, I thought this was going to be like in the midst of everything. But Howard is the same way. Like, Howard, my first time on Howard's campus and seeing all of the people who are like pre-med or whatever they were wearing the white coats. Like, I literally saw a group of like 30 of them that looked like us walking on campus young. I'm like, yo, this is nuts. Like, and for somebody like me, that's all it takes. Like, I just need to see that somebody can do it. And I'm like, yeah, there's no reason. Again, it's the New York, confident, cocky. Like, it's no reason that I can't be in that number.
Right.
Was this calling to faith and lead in faith in ministry? Was this always something ingrained in you that you were around, or like where did this come from in life?
Yeah, no. So my grandfather, again, my dad was dope. He had me go to church. My mom had me go to church. Even when I started throwing parties, and I started throwing parties like in the city, like in
A,
New York,
a
when the
Brooklyn
D,
church is different, man.
yeah, yeah. I still had to go like if she knew I had a party on the weekend, I had to be in church Sunday morning. Like, she didn't care, how late the party was, what was going on. That wasn't her concern. Her concern was, you in town, you gotta. But I say all that to say that I had the rhythm of church, but church didn't have me. And it wasn't until I got into my senior year, and I remember it specifically. I had two sets of groups. I had a rap group, two dudes, and I had a sister who was rapping. That I started doing. So I was doing the parties, and I was like, yo, the parties, they always want to listen to music. I started managing these people, and we started doing homecomings. And I remember us coming back from doing Lincoln's homecoming, And I remember after doing Lincoln University's homecoming, us going to our party that we had. It was on Wednesday nights. It was called Wet Wednesdays. It's a problem. But I remember seeing the influence I had. And again, the God piece it can't kind of shake. I remember God saying, yo, I need you to do this for me. Like, you're doing all of this for you. I need you to do this for me. I need you to help people see me in a different way. And that was the switch. And I remember being convicted. I remember calling all my guys together. The three of us who started it had a townhome together, off site, pay rent for a townhome together, off site, off campus rather. And I remember telling them, hey, we got to come over, have one of the group meetings. And I remember giving them the stack of money that we had. I remember giving them all of the details and saying, "Hey, I'm moving out." And I moved to a place. If you're in a DMV, I lived in Baltimore City proper. I moved to Essex because Essex was all I could afford. And then I remember my first door. My first door was like, look at your closet door wherever you live. That was like the front door to my apartment. It was like kick-in central. It was ridiculous. It got ransacked. People thought that I had more than I had. I remember that, but I remember specifically God saying, "I need you to do this for me. I don't need you to be building this for yourself." And so that's where it changed. You know what I mean? Like, I started feeling uneasy in all of the stuff that I was doing, and knowing that what I was doing really had no end to it, and it wasn't profiting anybody but me. And I remember it. I remember specifically the detail of it. And I remember having a meeting with my guys coming to me after I said I'm leaving, and they looking at me like, you're bugging. God is not calling you. How did you hear him? What did he sound like? You know, they being ignorant. And I'm like, yo, I was like, yo, I just know that I can't go this way. And that if y'all want to succeed, you need it without me, because it's like Jonah. I'm quoting about, like, what are you talking about? Like, don't worry about it. I gotta go. And so that's what it was. But it took some time, because now that when I think back on it, I know he was saying it for years, but it took me some time to really say, you know what, this is what I'm supposed to do. And this is the way. And all throughout, I was working at churches, kind of helping every now and again when I had time. And the young people would gravitate toward me because I had a story that made sense, and I knew where they were coming from, which is a good. Now I can't say the majority of my time in ministries. Now I've been on this side for a couple decades, but a good part of my beginning part of ministry was all youth ministry. And that's what I did. That was second nature for me, because it was easy to flip a song. It was easy to understand where they were and kind of make it make sense.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. So with that change, with that shift, like, where has it led you now, and like all the things that you're doing? Can you tell us a little bit about your books, as well as the podcast that you have that kind of got you to this point?
Yeah, so I was actually talking with a coach earlier today. I got another coach. So that one thing too is I realized that I need coaching people in my life. So not only do I have I just recently picked up a therapist, but I've always had coaches, and now I'm more kind of focused on that. And I was just talking with him earlier today about that, and just kind of delving into it. I'm doing the Ministry Pivot podcast, and really, man, what that is, like, it's really an opportunity around knowing that this is everybody's season of opportunity, and understanding that you can take hold of the season if you make some pivots. And so it's not just church. I mean, I started with mostly church stuff, but I've had entrepreneurs on. I got a couple more entrepreneurs I'm bringing on this year. And that really is just to get the voice out in a way that sounds like us. There's other people who are doing leadership, but no shots in this. But they wouldn't even say no shots. Like, they don't even know what that means, right? Like, they don't look like us, so the context is different. And that really is the call and the push of Ministry Pivot is to really help us with leadership that sounds like us, that looks like us, in a way that will help, and then to highlight other people. So I got Ministry Pivot going. I started a company years and years ago called After the Music Stops. And so that is after music stops. It's .org or .com. All of them I have. But I started that, and that's where I wrote my first book, dealing with after the music. So after the big event, how do you get kids plugged into youth ministry? How do you get them plugged into God? How do you train them up? All of that is on that. I also have several other books on that, and then I help authors to kind of get their books out. And then I do coaching and consulting along that line as well. So with After Music Stops and Ministry Pivot. And then there's other things that I really want to get into. What I was sharing with a friend of mine who actually, Pastor Heber Brown, is super dope in the Baltimore area. He has this thing called the Black Church Food Security Network. And I was sharing with him about some of the stuff that I'm doing and kind of helping him also because he and I went to school together as well, and was talking through the fact that I know my life call is really to help more people see God when they weren't looking for it, right? To see it in a different way. And that's what really all of these things are. And then there's other things that I really want to get kind of plugged into and try to be involved in to see if I can be a help and an influence and a resource in these areas. But right now it's Ministry Pivot. Right now it's After Music Stops. And then I can't, of course, leave out the fact that I have the privilege and opportunity to be married to an awesome wife who's a marriage and family therapist, and have an awesome daughter, and be able to be an example in that way, which I really think is my first call, and it's super awesome to have that opportunity to do that. And then, of course, last but not least, serving at Kingdom Fellowship, and God is letting us, rock and roll. So it's what we have the opportunity to do there. I think is super dope too. So that's kind of a lot, all in kind of one bubble, which is where I'm at now too. Which is why I was talking with my coach this morning. I'm like, bro, like I need to parse this stuff out.
Gotcha. I know you mentioned getting a therapist and a coach. Can you tell us the importance of having both?
Yeah. So I think, and I'll be honest, man, I have been in ministry now for almost 2 decades, which is nuts. And I've been a advocate for therapy for the whole time. At my previous church, we had a therapist on call where we would, at that church, we would actually supply and support probably the first 3 or 4 sessions for somebody who would come to me for pastoral care, but they needed more. And then we would
Mm-hmm.
send them to this person. But I say that because it's not until recently, until my grandfather, and I'll just be, it is what it is now. Until my grandfather passed it, I was like, yo, I really need this part. I've had coaches. I've had people to kind of help me get to the next space, to help me process, think through stuff, people who are where I want to be or who've seen stuff that I haven't seen before. But this is my first time having a intentional coaching situation with intentional therapy. Because I think what happens is sometimes and I'll just speak for myself, you try to put them in one, but they
Mm-hmm.
can't be one. They have to stand alone, right? I have a friend of mine who, Cato June, used to play for the Colts, and he actually just got Super Bowl ring, super dope. He actually just got assigned to be the NFL coach now, running back coach or line. I'm not super good on that, but anyway, he's one of the coaches. The point is that they have several different types of coaches, right? In
Mm-hmm.
basketball, there are several. You don't just have one; you have several. And I'm becoming to understand that more and more now. That not only do you need coaches, you need and you may need therapists. Like you may need people who specialize in certain things. If you want to be fully rounded, and I believe all of us do, you may need more people on your team that can help you develop in certain areas so you can be fully who you're supposed to be. So I'm an advocate now of both, and it costs you because both people I'm talking about they're not free. That's the other thing about getting these people right. You you have so when you have people, and I name them coaches and not mentors, because sometimes mentors are
Mm-hmm.
free and it's an illusion, right? Because it's like, oh, he's cool, he's pouring in me, we're talking, but it didn't cost you nothing, right? There has to be a level of investment. And it's wild because I coach and I realize, but I coach on a specific thing in an area, but like these long-term coaches you need. And if I need to add more to my team, I will, and just trust God that I'll be able to pay for these people. But at the end of the day, I don't want anything to stop me from being all that I believe God has called me to be. So I do think you need at least those two, but you probably need more.
Gotcha, gotcha. I just had another question. It slipped my mind. What what would your definition of success be? And can you kind of just give a parting word to, somebody who might be watching this? So that's two parts.
Yeah.
So define success for yourself, because it's different for everybody else, and then kind of give some encouraging words to maybe a brother or somebody who's maybe watching this and just kind of tuned in, and need to hear something to help them push through.
Yeah, I would say so. Success, man. We are all trying to figure out what that is,
Mm-hmm.
and what that is for you at what stage. Because I don't know if so. Like, I think success is seasonal. So let me say it that way, right? So we're looking all now at the NBA. Whenever this comes out, you're looking at the NBA, you're looking at the NFL, you're looking at college. March Madness is coming. It's here now, and whoever wins now is successful now. But there's another season coming, and I think that we have to define success by the season, right? So when I was coming out of New York, coming into college, there was a level of success, but it was seasonal. So now it's a different. So for me, to be honest, I'm still trying to quantify and qualify what success is. One of the things I talk with my coach about, I should just have y'all have my coach on here. I've been talking to him about him the whole time, but he had to help me and talk through this one point today that you need to find moments that aren't just breaks, but moments that are rest, because breaks are breaks in between two assignments. Rest is I've finished it and I'm stopping now. And I think success has to be a mixture of those two. That you have to know that, hey, I did this well and I can stop. And then you have to know that there's a next thing coming. But for this season, it's a win. So I think you got to fit. So, like for me in this season, success has to be me focused on my daughter who's transitioning into elementary school, which is ridiculous, right? My wife who's doing her own business thing, and what that. But there has to be success in that. But knowing that it's not gonna end, there may be a break, and there'll be some time to rest, and then there's some stuff that I kind of look at going forward. So I think that's the thought around success. But I can tell you what success isn't, and I think this may be more helpful. Success isn't what's happening over there. And what I mean by that is what the next dude is doing, what the next sister is doing, that's not it. Because you're on your path, which took me a minute to kind of get. Like, you're on your path that God has equipped you with in order to do things. And so that path is focused, and that path is for you. And so that's your success. You're not supposed to worry about anybody else's success, because you're not supposed to reap what they reap. You got to reap what you reap. And then honestly, man, I would say as a last piece, man, I think it's as much exposure as you can get, as much diverse exposure as you can get. And so being able to hear things, to see things, Lord willing, COVID continues to relax a little bit more and doesn't have any kids that pop out, we'll be able to travel some more and be exposed to more things. I think that's really going to be helpful for us. I know that's really been helpful for me. Me stretching myself out of what Russ is normally used to watching, looking at where I'm used to going, but being able to expose myself to more and expose myself to more that's not in my lane, but in other lanes, is helping me see what's possible and then bring that back to be prayerful about planning and positioning so that I can do what's next for me. I hope that helps and makes sense on both.
Absolutely, absolutely, man. I want to just thank you again for consenting to come on and just kind of share a little bit about yourself, share your story, share your gifts, your talents, and we truly appreciate. Thank you for sharing. all the information, all the helpful information. Especially, I appreciate your definition of success and how it's seasonal, and you have to define it by the seasons almost, and then understand that break and recipe. So I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Absolutely.
thank y'all. Appreciate y'all for having me on. This is dope. So I'm excited about what y'all doing and excited about being able to be a part, man. That's what's up.
Absolutely. Well, once again, we want to thank you all for joining us for Unapologetically Black Male, where we talk about surviving the stigma, standards, and systems. Once again, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share, follow us on all social media outlets, and make sure you connect with Reverend Russell Bernard if you have any more inquiring information, want to know about his books, anything that has going on. Make sure you click the info in the bio. Make sure you connect with him. Once again, thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Have a good one.